Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Hello, I'm Stephen Willis. I'm joined by Daylan Flowers, and we're going to do our weekly talk around Ole Miss sports. As we're recording this, Ole Miss just lost in the NCAA tournament to Notre Dame, 71-56. Daylan, it was a game that Ole Miss essentially lost in the first quarter. Notre Dame needed to come out quickly because of the depth issues they had. They were able to do that. They were able to hold on, and they just kind of kept it about a 10-point range for most of the game.
Exactly, man. Notre Dame did what we were expected to do, and that was just to come out and gun and leave everything out on the floor, because at this point in that time, what did we have to lose? And that was nothing. And I just didn't see that from the team today. And then you can kind of see the visible, kind of hurt on my face, because I love this basketball team this year. And we had a lot of just great potential and chemistry. And so it hurt to see, of course, so many of our players are going to be gone after this year. So it hurts to see that. But we just, I felt like we got away from our brand of basketball today. We took a lot, I don't know the exact number, but we took a lot of jump shots. And if you've watched Coach Yo's team, not just this year, but since he's arrived at Oxford, that's not our game plan a lot of the times. We take the ball to the hole. We create a lot of offensive rebounds. We like to get to the foul. We like to get to the charity trap and convert on a lot of free throws. We took a lot of mid-range and three-point shots, which is out of our normal type of half-court offense. And it killed us, man. I think that's just something that we haven't seen all year, and we, tried to adapt to that for some odd reason today, and the shots wouldn't go in. And we committed a lot of stupid turnovers in the first 4 minutes of the game, which put us in a really big deficit. And Notre Dame just kept riding on momentum, man. They, of course, had a good home court advantage there, and they rolled on that advantage of being able to have a big piece of momentum in this type of situation. And it hurts, man. I think we could have went out and fought a little harder today, and I just didn't see that from the girls today. And I wish we just would have gave a little bit more. And I know that's going to unfortunately sting in a lot of their hearts, especially the ones that either are not going to come back, of course, because of being seniors, or maybe go somewhere else. So it's a gut stinger for sure. And now we just have to see what the offseason brings. Of course, if you don't know, if you're new to this Coach Yo program, she's kind of like the Lane Kiffin of the transfer portal. She attacks the transfer portal, and a lot of our talented players over the last few years and on this year's squad is too have come via the transfer portal. So expect her to watch what happened in this game very hard and understand what it takes to compete with teams like Notre Dame. I said this when we got knocked out against LSU. We've gotten to the point where we're really good. But we're not elite yet, and we're not able to compete with LSU, Carolina, Notre Dame, Iowa, and even Stanford. I know we beat them last year, but I think last year Stanford was kind of just resting on their morals and not expecting who we were at that time, coming in, only having one tournament appearance before then. And then I don't think they kind of realized what we truly were. And so we kind of got them with an uppercut, and it caught everyone off guard. But I think the world is on notice that this is a team, this is a coaching staff and a program that could really be really good. But we just have to do a lot of things differently if we want to get into that mix of being one of the elite teams in women's basketball.
Do you think it's a problem for women's basketball? Because people love the first couple of days of the men's tournament because of all the upsets and all the chaos. There's been exactly one upset in the women's tournament this year.
Yeah. That's a really good question, man. And I can say it looking off someone that, if this is me and I am not that big of a women's college basketball fan as I am, I definitely would say so. Yes, because we have naturally become obtained to focusing on the men's tournament. And that's just the way it is. And that's where my excitement has been for a better part of my lifetime. I would say I recently got into college basketball, maybe like junior year of high school. And so recent in my lifetime. And so I love that question. And I think that's something that can be brought up in a much larger platform too, because even over the time that they've been in the same mist, we've heard so many stories and articles as such, just talking about the way that the women's tournament is just less respected than the men's tournament. And so that's a really good question, man, because if it's maybe a week different time standpoint, then maybe I would say it could get the respect and viewership that it deserves, because let me tell you something, the women this year, and not just, of course, with our squad, but all over the country, there are superstars, there are phenoms on multiple teams. There's great coaches on a lot of teams right now. And there's a lot to look forward to. And I say this because I love college women's basketball. The WNBA has just not developed to where I am happy enough to say I continue watching a lot of these girls once they get to the WNBA. And so I like to tell people, if you're not into it, kind of get into it. And if you're into it now, enjoy them, because when they get to that next level, it's kind of hard to continue enjoying them in the way that we're enjoying them right now. So that's a great question, man. I definitely agree with it, because it's a hard, even in this time standpoint, I think they gain a lot of respect and notoriety over the last few years. It's still never going to be on that same level playing field as we maybe want it to be. So, yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, I think they want to make it them equitable, both the men's and the women's tournament. But the problem is the bottom part of the women's tournament is not as good as the bottom part of the men's tournament.
That's true. And
you could, I think a 14-team playoff, what we're talking about in college football, I think a 14-team playoff for women's basketball would outdraw the men's NCAA tournament as far as viewership.
I do. And that's a great point, because we're seeing teams, and again, we've seen teams like this in the men's, where Purdue just beat Utah State, I think by like 20, 25, 24 yesterday. But we're seeing teams like South Carolina who are just eviscerating teams that they're playing, and even in not just, lower level schools, but like they blew past North Carolina, I think by 35 2 days ago. And I think that will maybe give a chance for Carolina to be toughened up a little bit before they get to the later parts of the tournament, which makes for a more exciting view, because I watched like the first 3 minutes of the South Carolina, North Carolina game, and then after that it was over, and it's like there's no point of watching this anymore. So that's a really good correlation to it, because a lot of these teams are, and I say this wholeheartedly, trying to just get to the point of reaching the Sweet 16 for the first time in a long time, or reaching the Elite Eight for the first time in a long time. And I truly believe a lot of them feel like they don't have a lot of confidence in this setup, because in the women's tournaments, you're not going to neutral sites. You're going to a Carolina's hosting a tournament. We just played Notre Dame, and Notre Dame is hosting the first set of games. And so that home court advantage is a lot, and you can't tell me otherwise. And again, that's my personal opinion, but I truly believe that, not just in basketball, but home court advantage in any sport builds on a lot, because sports is so much on momentum. And when teams are as elite and have as much as elite coaching staff as Carolina do, and on top of that, they're at home, that builds a lot of just success that they're going to have, especially in the early rounds. So that's a great question, man. And I think if we can develop, again, I say we, but if the women's committee or something, maybe down the road, I know it's probably not going to be anytime soon, can develop something more just, I don't know, compacted, or maybe just neutral is the word. I think that may be a good standpoint. Maybe even a new little system. I know they've talked about kind of maybe tweaking the men's system a little bit. I don't know how I feel about what they talked about as much, but we may see changes to come. We've seen so much in the football world, and continue to see more change coming in a few years as well. We may see some change in the women's college basketball world too.
I think it would be really cool, like on the men's tournament for the neutral sites, you have them in these big NBA type arenas and these super domes and all of that. Why not go to the next level size down city down, and their arena host the women's tournament, where it's like a 10 to 15,000 seat arena. Or something like that, because it would look better on TV. It would still be a neutral site. That to me makes sense.
I agree with that wholeheartedly, because that also gives maybe a chance for teams, say we're playing, but we have to go like we did last year to the West Coast. That was a hard advantage for a lot of our fans to be able to travel to California last year and support our team. And I think that gives maybe a more comfortable chance for teams to kind of have a neutral standpoint of fan base. And I think that's important, because we've kind of seen that, not really in football, but I think a more compact base of having a good opposite team fan base. And I think that's really important. Again, we can say as much as we want, but talent mixed with home court advantage leads to a lot of success, especially, you said, in the early rounds, until they get to the Elite Eight, where they're finally in a neutral standpoint. But that's 3 games before that point, where it could be a different game if we're in a neutral site. So that's a great point, and I think it allows fans who again are already spending enough money on travel, hotel, food, things like that, maybe a little bit less of a cost too, which is not very common nowadays, but hopefully we can get to a point where it is common. So that's a really good point, man. I love that point that you just made. That's something that can be talked about really broadly.
Let's change the subject a little bit. Spring practice is going on for Ole Miss.
Yep.
Have you heard anything about spring practice in the last week? What have you heard?
Not much, man. I actually spoke with Caden Davis about a week ago, our kicker, and who, of course, kind of put his name on the map this past season with his job being a great kicker. He just seemed really excited, man. I think the guys are kind of excited to be back on the field and kind of being in full training mode. And I think they're excited just to and I say this because if anyone hasn't watched the Lane Kiffin presser from a couple of days ago, he said a lot of great things. And I think I want to say this too. Jackson Dart has truly become the leader of this football team. And I think you are not going to see as much return talent on a football team in this day and age as you're going to see this year on this Ole Miss football team. And so I think a lot of these guys, especially the guys that have come back and they were here last year, the years before, are really just enjoying the embarkment of what we have here and what we hope to have in this upcoming season. I just think they're truly excited. And I am excited too, man. Lane talked about the pressure, the beefing of the size on our own line and the size on our defensive line. So I'm excited to see what that's going to look like here in coming weeks at the Grove Bowl, sooner rather than later. And I'm excited, man. So that's really all that I've heard. They've kind of been keeping a low volume on, and that kind of makes me happy, man. I think they're locked in. They understand what the value is in terms of spring football right now, what we have going on. And also, I think people may not understand as well. There's another transfer portal coming up very, very, very soon. And I think coaching staffs are taking a close look of maybe what we need again, because again, we're not done. And so maybe, what are some different targets we can get to fully lock this team up. And Lane's been saying something. This is his first time saying this, but he said something that I love. And he's like, this is probably the best roster and coaching staff we have had here, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the best team. And I love that statement because I think it keeps him and the coaching staff and the players on a level head and not getting too high, which is going to allow us to, we will collapse on that kind of expectation. And I love how just calm and resilient Lane has been looking at it recently in the pressers. And I think the players are understanding of what's at stake for this football team, what is honestly expected for this football team, and what could change not just Ole Miss football, but what could change college football if we can do what we hope to do this upcoming season. So I'm excited, and I think the coaching staff and the players are excited, but also very locked into what can be a very significant spring football time right now, man.
How far do you think Kaden Davis could kick a field goal if he had to? Because that 57-yarder would have been good from 65.
And I was going to say that depending on when, 65 to 70 yards, man, I truly believe that. I think if he can get a good spot on the rotation on the ball, I believe it's 65 to 70 yards. And that's not me. Watch the kid. Go watch some film on the kid. This is not me being over dramatic or anything. The kid is truly bargaining to being one of the best kickers in the country. And again, like I said, he's enjoying his football right now. So the way I talked to him last week, he just seemed very happy in a way I haven't seen him before. And I think that's going to be a good spark for us in the springtime and even when the season comes, man. So look out for Caden Davis. I think he has an aura on him right now that is going to be very scary for opposing teams.
Yeah, it's the ball sounds different when he kicks it.
It does. And I think that's something that he's worked on, kind of being more calm in situations like we had in the Tulane game where when he came in unexpectedly, we needed him. I think he's working on those type of situations in practice more where will allow him to be more comfortable. Because if you've watched this team since Lane has been here, and even before Ole Miss, we know he likes to go on fourth down. And that's not going to be all the time, but that's a good major percent of the time. And when we do put our kicker out there, I think Lane has to have full trust in him. And I think Lane does have full trust in Kaden Davis at this point. And so we're going to continue to see that confidence in him because of Lane Kiffin's trust in him, continue to build and build and build. And so I'm excited for him, man. I'm truly happy for the kid. He deserves everything he's going to get and everything he's gotten. So I'm excited for him.
Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Daylan Flowers in for his weekly segment. Thank you, Daylan, man. Yeah, what's going on with the Daylan Show? Tell everybody.
So man, I've been off so I had spring break the week before this and didn't record then. I've just been so hectic this week and the week before, so I haven't really gotten into recording. Should be back this week. I already have an episode recording time planned for this Wednesday. And so next week I also have another episode planned, which I am really, really excited about. So next week, be looking out for that post and that episode. I'm excited for that guest. But it's going to be a fun week, man. I'm actually going to be going back home Thursday to Texas with Mom, and we're going to be going to a few of the Sweet 16 games, Duke and I don't know why, Clemson, I believe, and NC State and Marquette, if I'm not mistaken, will be the games in Dallas for this upcoming weekend. So I'm excited about that, man. But the Daylan Show it's going really good, man. I'd like to get back on track now, but the viewership and the love and the gratitude I've been receiving so far, it's been very just very loving. So I can't thank you guys enough for your continued love and gratification. But thank you so much.
Daylan Flowers, the Daylan Show. Thank you very much for coming by, and we'll talk to you next week, bud.
Anytime, man. Hi to y'all.